Canada will play Panama in the Concacaf Nations League semifinals on June 15th in Las Vegas, with the winner playing on the 18th against either the United States or Mexico. The US did win the first ever edition of this competition, but the second one is up for grabs and Canada desperately wants to win it. So today, Alex and I sat down to discuss all the big talking points heading into these two matches for Canada and whether or not we think they can win the whole thing. All right, Alex, so to start things off, we are going to take a look how each side got to this point, starting with our Canadians. They topped their group with Curacao and Honduras in it, and then Panama went on and topped their group with Costa Rica and Martinique. It came down to the last match in that group where they got a big result over Costa Rica, and they ended up being the higher seed against Canada, so it was a wild ride to get here, but what did you make of the group stage?
Yeah, for Canada, it was a bit of a slow start, almost, a bit of a World Cup hangover there. Just obviously ecstatic to get there. They end up having that loss in Honduras in the waterlogged game after such a great start against Curacao. But they bounced back nicely to finish strong, got the back-to-back comfortable wins over Curacao away, Honduras at home to book their spot relatively easily in the end, although they slipped down to the third seed of 4 for the Nations League final. As for Panama, it was pretty good. I think they were a bit frustrated that they didn't even make the playoff, that Costa Rica went on that obscene run at the end of qualifying to make it. So they came out strong. They beat Costa Rica in their first game at home to kind of set the tone. They ended up battering Martinique at home 5-0 as well. But then Martinique managed to get a point off them away. So it left things open heading into the last game. If Costa Rica got a win at home, they would go through. Panama needed a draw or a win in the end. The win, they were able to get 1-0 to get through and finish second. So overall, I'd say a pretty good group stage for Panama, undefeated, did what they needed to do, and that's, you have to respect that.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was definitely Canada's reaction, because like you said, they seemed hungover. That match in Honduras was a frustrating watch, but then to know that everything's on the line. If they want to go on and win a trophy, they needed to get a result at home against Honduras, and they smashed them 4-1, played some very attractive football, which we will get into. So the big statement to get to this point right now. So before we kind of get into what we should expect from each side, let's first just take a look at who's available. So is there any suspensions, injuries? Looking at Canada, we know that Derek Cornelius obviously had the hamstring injury, which is super disappointing. Alex and I are very high on Cornelius. We thought that it's almost like this is his moment to really push a Kamal Miller to start in this role for Canada. So that hamstring injury rules him out, which is a shame. We know that Davies is recovering. Osorio just returned from his MCL strain, played 89 minutes for TFC, which his first match back. What did you make of that, Alex? Is it surprising to you? Because I guess it's a good thing that he played 89 minutes for TFC before this, or is it a little worrying that maybe he didn't play like 60 or so, kind of get that test feel before you go into a big match like this against Panama?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit surprising, I think, given that it was a knee injury as well and that he'd been on the sideline for a while, right? It takes, a bit of time to build up match fitness. So, I mean, it's good on one hand that he was able to go 89, hopefully with no repercussions, but certainly usually you'd expect a bit of caution given the heavy schedule of international games, of MLS games coming up. But hopefully he's better off for it. It's great just to see him back because these sorts of knee injuries can be annoying. So, yeah.
And for Panama, I mean, not any big injury concerns, unlike Canada, but Canada doesn't have any suspensions, which is lovely, but that's not the case for Panama, is it?
Yeah, no, obviously in Nations League, there was 2 potential suspension watches, of course, red cards in the last game where Canada avoided that. But then there was a big one, which is yellow cards. If you got 2 yellow cards across any point in the group stages, you could get a suspension. For Panama, Alberto Quintero got a yellow card in the first game, ended up getting a yellow card in the last game, so he should be suspended per the rules. As for Panama, they also had a red card in the final game. Funnily enough, Jose Fajardo, or Fajardo, not completely sure on that one. He ended up scoring the goal that got them through the Nations League finals, but he also picked up a red card later in that game and will miss out on the semifinal as well.
Now, taking a look at Panama, Alex, I'm curious what you expect from this side. We know Thomas Christensen has been a fantastic addition for this program. He's done wonderful things with Panama. Like you said, very disappointing that they didn't qualify for the World Cup because it looked for so long like that was going to be them. They have some good players in there as well. What stands out for you from some of their players as well as Christensen's tactics?
Yeah, this is a very good Panama team. I think they showed it during World Cup qualifiers. They're a frustrating outfit, especially at home, where, you know, they can maybe dictate play and control proceedings a lot more. They're a team that wants to play on the front foot now, and a lot of their games during qualifiers and even in Nations League, they held a lot of the ball. They were generating chances. They're a team that wants to. They might play a bit more of a 4-4-2, which would indicate direct, but you know, they have their strikers drop. Those wingers are comfortable tucking in. You know, Christensen played at Barcelona back in his day, and I think he's trying to apply a bit of those tactics to how they play. They're comfortable playing on the break. Away to Costa Rica in that must-win game, they sat back, absorbed a lot of possession, which is something we haven't seen a lot from them, and got the win. So for Canada, it'll be interesting to see when they played World Cup qualifiers. Panama actually dominated the ball in both games against them. But given Canada sometimes struggles to break down low blocks but are so comfortable in transition, maybe Panama will sit back and throw a bit of a tactical surprise. And look, this is an experienced team. This is a team that's built to win now. Only 2 of their players are born after 2000. And 9 of their players are either turning 30 this year or already 30, and some of them are pushing 40. There's a lot of players in their prime, though, like Coco Carrasquilla of the Houston Dynamo is a fantastic midfielder. He really helps set the tempo for them in possession. Yoel Barcenas is their number 10, and he's a creative force. He can, kind of roam around and cause problems. Anibal Godoy is also huge in the midfield, given especially defensively the way they support Carrasquilla. And then Luis Mejia in goal, is going to be an important piece.
Now, I find it very interesting because I remember those matches. I just didn't think that in both matches, Panama had more of the ball. So I'm curious. I want to go off a statement John Herman said. He said, basically, unless Xavi and Iniesta come through the sky and play for Canada, we're going to be using our strength, which is playing out wide. Do you think that statement makes you think that Panama will have a little bit more of the ball? Would you like to see them have a little bit more of the ball? Or what do you expect for John Herman? Because I mean, we know Canada's strength comes from the wide areas. I mean, the fact that Atiba and Larea may not even make the starting 11 tells you the quality we have out wide. But that kind of is a little telling for me for how he feels comfortable playing with that midfield. So what do you think? Do you personally believe that Panama will dominate possession, or do you expect Herman to maybe change things up?
I mean, I think for Canada, they want to continue to grow in that sort of area. We've seen them in a lot of games want to hold on to the ball more. I'd just say you'd have to be smart, just be wary of Panama's transition threats. And I think that's why, in that back 3 that, they're likely to play for Canada, their wing backs have to be very diligent. The midfielders as well have to make sure they track space, because what's great about Canada, as we've seen, is they can be very flexible tactically, and they can set up in a way to, of course, maximize their strengths, which are in those wide areas, potentially through those wing backs, and also control a bit more of the midfield, just because in the modern game, if you don't win the midfield, you don't win very much, as we saw at the World Cup. And then from there, just be wary that Panama may be comfortable holding a lot more of the ball, that they might not be some of these teams Canada are used to facing Concacaf that will immediately sit back, just see Davies, see all the speed, and sit back. Panama won't be as scared of that, so Canada will just have to be ready for Panama to push up. But because of that, they're they'll have to be ready to defend, and when those moments come, to get Davies, get Buchanan, get David and Laren up front going in transition.
Now, for those of you watching, Alex has a big pet peeve around the 4-4-2 system that we played with. He likes the modern way, that 3-man midfield. And if it wasn't going to be Alex's preferred 4-3-3 for this Canadian men's national team, John Herman did show us in the last window that he did find a system that does utilize a 3-man midfield. They've been playing the 3-5-2, and honestly, I think that plays to a lot of their strengths. So I'm going to build, and Alex, you can pipe in if you don't agree with it. I think we kind of talked a little bit beforehand, but I'm going to build probably my projected starting 11 for both matches, whether Canada wins this match or loses. If they lose, maybe the third place match is a little different, but regardless, I'm assuming that this will be the starting 11 for both matches. Like I said, 3-5-2. You have Borien in net. At right wing back, Tajon Buchanan. Outside right center back, you have Alistair Johnston. Central center back, you have Victoria. Outside left, I think we would have thought it would have been Cornelius, but right now it's going to be Kamal Miller. You can maybe debate Kennedy could be in there. Outside left, or the left wing back, will be Alphonso Davies. The 3-man midfield, Eustachio, Kone, Azorio, as long as obviously Azorio is ready to go. And then the 2 strikers, David and Laren. That system, just in my eyes, like you said, gets the best of everything. You have Laren and David, who both obviously need to start. You get to play with a 3-man midfield that hopefully will keep growing. We saw a lot of really good things between Eustachio, Kone, and Azorio. You then have your wing backs. You got that protection out back with your three center backs. Like, I like a lot about it. I do think, though, Alex, there could be some debates, and I kind of mentioned some of them. But, I mean, if Davies isn't good to go, you would assume that Atiba could be a backup option, or maybe even Richie Laryea. Or do you think Laryea could even push a Tajon Buchanan, or do you not think there's any way that Buchanan won't start?
It's something to consider, because I think the big key about the 3-5-2, and what I love about it as a formation, is that when you get the balance right, it can just, you get so much support in all areas. You have those three defenders. You can still control the midfield, but you can get that push from wide areas. But the key and the secret to this formation is the wing backs. And when Alphonso Davies and Tajon Buchanan are fully fit, they can definitely do the job. Buchanan's played at wing back before. Davies has had his best form as a wing back. But between the pair of them, Davies is coming off an injury and, hasn't played in a while. Buchanan did recently get into games for Bruges, but he's also coming off an injury, so he might not be fully fit. Richie Laryea could be a wild card here because he is very fit, as we've seen for Toronto FC. He can run up and down that touchline. He's been playing a bit of center back lately, which has been hilarious. He's done well to his credit in that role, unfamiliar role. So he could be an option just because of that fitness, the defense as well, because, the biggest demand on the wingbacks isn't going forward. That's the fun part. You're a little higher up the field. You get a little overzealous. It's tracking back. Laryea can definitely do that. So he is someone to watch, especially if a Buchanan or a Davies isn't fit. I think Davies is the bigger concern, given that Buchanan has those minutes under his belt. So something to watch if a guy like Laryea could slot over. Heck, Sam Adekubi as well can slot in that left wing back, and he'll bring for sure that defensive solidity, because I think it's such a crucial position in this formation.
And if Osorio isn't available, I think we talked about this a little bit, but like, you think that there's any way it's anyone else other than Hoylett who steps in there?
I think that's the logical decision. We've mentioned, Hoylett kind of fits that idea of what Osorio does. Osorio, what he brings to that three-man midfield is that Eustáquio is going to do a lot of the progressing from deep, and the playing is a bit more of a 6 as he does for Canada instead of an 8 as he does for Porto. Ismael Kone now, as we saw versus Honduras, his job is to shuttle the ball forward, progress it. But what Osorio did that helped him is that he would find space between the lines to either play and open up pockets or just draw in defenders. And I think of the midfielders that are out there, Hoylett is the closest, if not very similar to that profile. He loves to play between those lines to combine and just force midfielders to stretch out. And I think if you're going to get the most out of Kone and Eustáquio, I think Hoylett's profile, plus he's good defensively. He's been playing wing back this year, so his defensive play is a bit underrated because you've known him so long as a winger, as an attacking player, and he's comfortable playing centrally, so he'd be my logical replacement.
Now, Alex, I want to pick your brain on something very quickly here. Box midfields are becoming very popular in the modern game right now. Pep does it very well. If Canada is to take the game a little bit towards Panama and utilize a box midfield, trying to get options through the midfield, you could see maybe a Jonathan David kind of sliding into that. So you have your Eustáquio, your Kone, your Osorio, and then your Jonathan David, because we know that he can combine in those type of areas, which would then lead Laird up front. Do you think that would be a way for Canada to dominate the midfield even more if that was a part of their plan? Or do you think that David won't drop that deep?
You could drop him in there. I mean, he's comfortable playing there. He's a good shout. If not, I feel like two number 10s of Hoylett and Osorio together would complement each other very nice, the way they like to find those pockets, and could be a bit of a nightmare, for Panama to defend, especially because Panama loves to play a double pivot. So, you could get them running around if you have the two number 10s. So it is certainly an option. We've seen Herdman turn to it before. I mean, the U.S. game in 2019 is the most famous example. That game, we saw Osorio and Scott Arfield at the time playing the double 10s, and I'm sure Hoylett could fit easily into that role. So maybe something to watch is, maybe especially tactically as the game goes along, maybe it's something you see at halftime. One of those guys gets thrown in, you see a bit of a different look.
All right, Alex, I want you to tell me now one player who you think is going to step up and have a massive window for Canada.
I'm going to be curious to watch Ismael Kone this time. I think he really had a big coming out party that last window where he was so solid against Curacao, and then goes into the Honduras game. He was dominant against Honduras. He was just everywhere, gliding through the midfield. I think that's what we want to see from Canada. I think at the World Cup, they struggled a bit in midfield. We've mentioned it at length. And having, a midfielder who could dominate games will go a long way. Because, look, we've seen the likes of Davies and Buchanan have big moments. David, Laren all step up. Eustachio was, the team's heartbeat during the World Cup qualifying run. But I think if a guy like Kone can step up and join that group and show that his performances in March were no fluke, Canada's going to be in a very good position.
Yeah, it's a great shout. It's an outside the box shout. I like that. I would have maybe went with a Cornelius if he was playing. You could always throw it to Alistair Johnson as well, but I'll take the more obvious route. I'm going to take Jonathan David for a few reasons. Number one, he just had the season of his life, scoring 24 goals. He desperately wants a move. I don't know where he's going to end up. My gut tells me the Premier League. Now he's got 2 matches to do something very special at the international level. If Canada does win this trophy, their first trophy in 23 years, it could get some more attention. It could get some more notice on him. I think, like I mentioned many times, I think that David's probably just waiting for pieces, other strikers to get moved around, but this is an opportunity for him to shine maybe one last time before he takes the rest of the summer off, because I personally don't expect him in the Gold Cup squad. Hopefully find that transfer, but this is a big moment for a big time player. We know his incredible goal scoring record. We know that he's taken a big stride this season, and I'm really excited to see what he could potentially do for Canada and hopefully find the back of the net a few times. But a player we have not mentioned yet, it may be his final ever match or matches for the Canadian national team, and that is Atiba Hutchinson. Alex, is this going to be Atiba's last dance?
Certainly feels like it, which is, again, just so sad because it's crept up on us. Like, yes, he's, turned 40, but he was just putting in these high-level performances for so long. They almost take it for granted. But look, he said it after the Honduras game in March. His time is, it's running up. At Besiktas, he's done. He's leaving after 10 years there. Sounds like his indications are, unless he maybe comes home and plays locally for a year or two, sounds like he's contemplating retirement there. This is a huge moment for him because there aren't going to be many trophy opportunities after this. There's always the Gold Cup, but it feels like he just wants to win that Nations League, lift that trophy as a captain as he deserves. So hopefully this moment can be it for him, just because he's been at the program for over 20 years, always selflessly, always accepting the calls, always wanting to play in those games. Heck, he'd retired in 2016 and thought he'd had enough of it. Then John Herdman gave him that call in that famed Sandy Beach, and he accepted the call once again and led his young charges to all the way back to the World Cup, a stage he'd never thought he'd play on. So what better way to walk into the sunset for Canada in that regard? And I think on that note, I think there could be a few players that join him. I think it's something where, for some of these guys who've been around in the program and, in their mid-30s, like a Milan Borjan, like a Steven Vittoria, it's hard to say they'd retire right away because they're still in good club form, right? Borjan helped his team qualify for Champions League. Vittoria had Chavez ended up going all the way to mid-table and almost pushed for Europe after, being pegged as a relegation battler. So they're obviously in great form, but they're at an age where, there's no guarantees they're at this World Cup. And all of a sudden, if you win a Nations League, you look at the young players coming through, you could be happy with where you've left it, and maybe a retirement could creep in. So certainly some names to watch, especially if Canada wins. Some of those guys be like, oh, well, we got that goal. Let's move forward and maybe let some of those new guys take over.
Yeah, I think this is his last opportunity for a few different reasons. You touched on a lot of them, Alex. I agree with everything you said. But, the fact that he is coming to a match or a tournament where you basically have 2 games. You have the semis, you have the finals. I think we both are pretty sure he won't start either one. But Atiba can definitely, just because of his ability, his footballing IQ, he can come on later in the match and probably do a job for 20 or so minutes. The Gold Cup, for me, probably isn't going to be an opportunity for him because, yeah, he's older than Borjan, he's older than Vittoria, and he didn't play much this season at all. So the climb to the Gold Cup, I'm sure that if he wanted to play, he could, but that's 6 matches. It's grueling. I just think this opportunity for the Gold Cup is for, like you said, the next generation, those next group of guys. And it's tricky, and it'd be a fitting end to a sensational career for Canada if he was able to, like you said, come out of the retirement thoughts and in 2016 all the way up to the World Cup, and then to end it on this note could be a beautiful story for his fantastic career. And that leads to my next point. Canada has not won a trophy since the 2000 Gold Cup. I've been saying this for a while now, but it feels like this is the time. This is the opportunity. It's the reason that you're seeing the strongest squad sent for all 4 sides that are competing in this competition, because it's 2 matches. You're 2 matches away from lifting silverware, opposed to the Gold Cup where you're not going to get like maybe your strongest squad. You got 6 games to go. You have this group of guys who did something special, getting the World Cup with Canada, like you mentioned, Hutchinson's potential final dance, some of the older crew. You got Wotherspoon in here. It feels like this is the opportunity. On top of that, we got the kind of, I mean, the way that it shaped out, you got the kind of matchup against Panama, and then you got to take down one of the big 2, whether it's US or Canada, assuming that you have to take care of Panama first. But doesn't it just feel like the timing is now? The timing's now for Canada to win, no?
Yeah, it feels like it. I mean, every factor's lining up. You got a collection of, star players that had some of their best seasons ever as well, like a Jonathan David. Alphonso Davies maybe didn't have his best season, collectively with Bayern, but he still had a great individual season until his late injury. Stefan Eustáquio had a fantastic season. Even guys like Tajon Buchanan tasted the Champions League for the first time. Ismail Kone made his move to Europe for the first time. The center back pool is growing. Canada's in a great place personnel-wise. You add in this trophy, like you mentioned, just 2 wins away. The last time they've been in this position is in a Gold Cup semifinal, but what was the difference in those opportunities? They're always playing like a Mexico or a US in those games, and it's just different because you have to topple those sorts of teams in those games. Whereas now, Panama's no pushover. Make no mistake. We looked at it in this preview. It's going to be a tough game, but look, it's something where if you can face Mexico and the US in a final, it's a whole different story. That's that next hurdle. And you add in as well just all these veterans that have been here for so long, for them to finally get this moment, this first final really that they've a lot of them have played together. Like it just feels like it's all lined up. So it's really now up for Canada to go out there, make the most of all of that, come together and make some history over the next week.
And don't get me wrong, the rise that we've seen for the Canadian men's national team has been nothing short of incredible. But now that we've kind of got to this point where we qualified for World Cup, we're guaranteed to go to the next one. We're going to be competing in Gold Cups, Nations League. It's time to bring it home. The US fans, the pundits, same from Mexico, look at Canada being like, yes, you're improving, but where's the proof that you've really taken that step? This could be it. Winning silverware could be the opportunity to do that. And I really truthfully believe that this is a fantastic chance that Canada could do it. And this is going to lead to the final question, Alex. Hypothetically, again, we got to take care of business against Panama. If we don't, it's this point's moot. But if we do, who would you rather see Canada play? Who do you think that we got a better opportunity of beating in the final, Mexico or the US, and why?
I think it would probably be Mexico. I just think that's something where the US, they're in a scary moment now, and that they're younger team. They're getting guys like Balogun to commit. You look at that nucleus of players that they've got in a great age, all pushing in Europe. And, in that regard, yes, there's some instability off the field with the coaching situation. Who the heck's going to be their coach in time for 2026? But I think that's something where still the core's been there. They proved at the World Cup that they can get back to a World Cup and then make it out of their group stages. This is a team on the ascendancy. Mexico, on the other hand, there's, just a lot of questions. Like Tata Martino left. You got Diego Coca in now. And he's obviously got a plan, but you look across that squad, they just don't have that same youth that the US or even Canada have been able to amass. Guys like a Diego Lainez, who was supposed to be in that category with the Davieses, the Pulisic's, and all these players. He just, he hasn't hit that potential. And now he's back in Liga MX after his stint in Europe. You look across this roster, it is a bit of an older, Mexican roster. They didn't do great at the World Cup. They didn't make it to the round of 16 for the first time since the 90s. This is a team that in every metric is on the wrong side. They didn't win any of those trophies in 2021, like Nations League and Gold Cup, which they lost to the US, which was also, not something we're used to seeing from Mexico. It feels like if you get Mexico, you're playing them at the right time in their cycle, whereas the US, they're only up on the ascendancy, like Canada is, but because of that, I think as tough as it is, I feel like it'd be fitting to go over Mexico, because Mexico for Canada has been such a bogey team for so long. Yes, the US has been, but the Canada beat them a few times over the last few years. Whereas Mexico, it just feels like for them, there's a huge mental block they have to get over by beating a Mexico, and this would be a perfect opportunity to do that.
The good news is we won't have to wait very long to see who will be crowned champions of the Concacaf Nations League. If you want to watch those matches live, be sure to subscribe to OneSoccer. And if you enjoyed this video, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.